Hello everybody, it's JonnyVR here, back with my review of Doctor Who Series 12, and today I'm going to give my review of the 5th episode, Fugitive of the Judoon. And as always, I'll keep the first part of this video spoiler free, and I'll give you a spoiler warning when I start going into the details of the episode. So make sure you click off there, but come back later when I give my score of the episode. So I just finished watching it, okay, and it starts off, Fugitive of the Judoon, classic Doctor Who title, there's something of the insert alien race here. Sounds like a simple premise. It made it look like it was a simple premise from all the trailers, all the photos, just typical Judoon mission, whatever, and you get there's going to be a fugitive and they're going to get it. Really, really sounds simple enough, but it sort of almost convolutedly like twists into something else, because as you will have known by now, this series does have a story arc associated with it, and this story arc is developed considerably in this episode, almost to the point where I feel like this episode is only existing to push the story forward, like the story arc. Yeah, it's fun to see Judoon like walking around. They get some good animations. I think they've improved the animatronics for the mouth because it does look good, and it's good to see them stomping around and doing stuff. It's sort of co-written by Vinny Patel, who wrote Demons of the Punjab for last season, but it's also co-written with Chris Chibnall. So I'm starting to think like whenever we see Chris Chibnall's name on an episode, it's gonna be like pushing the story forward, like the story arc. But it's almost hard to see with like how much of this is Vinny Patel and how much is Chris Chibnall just doing his Chris Chibnall thing. There's some big reveals in this episode. Not like there's one about midway through, or not even midway through, probably about a third of the way through, and it's a great reveal. But then towards the end, there's even bigger reveal, and it's utter confusion, And if you're watching this, like after you've seen the episode, you'll know what I'm talking about because, like, honestly, I'm so confused. As part of like the series arc, it sort of definitely almost asks a million more questions without giving a single answer, which I don't know. It's I tell you what it is. It feels more convoluted than some of Stephen Moffat's story arcs, which is saying something. Yeah, the characters, Graham, Yaz, Ryan, they all get something to do. I think more or less. I think Graham not so much, but they even make a reference to that in this episode, and it's hilarious the way they do it. So the midway question, halfway through the series, how is it for me? Well, it started off really good. The solid first two episodes, really enjoyed it. Excluding Orphan 55, I thought Nikola Tesla's was a great episode. And this one it sort of can't be its own episode in its own right because it's sort of pushing the story on a little bit, which is okay. Like, but it sort of all depends on the answers we get, I think. So you got to take this one with a sort of a bit of a pinch of salt, and you have to be patient with it. So anyway, now I'm going to go into the spoilers of the episode. So here's your spoiler warning. Click off now if you haven't seen it yet, and come back when you have, so you can see what score I give it at the end, and leave a comment to see what you think of the episode. So we have these two characters, basically Ruth and Lee, and you sort of immediately get suspicious of Lee. He's really, dodgy. He looks like he looks like he's hiding something. And Ruth is kind of happy-go-lucky tour guide person. You get a few laughs from her, because they play on that everybody doesn't want to go on a tour guide thing, and then you have this sort of guy who's selling coffee who actually has a thing for Ruth, and he's saying to her that she can do better than Lee, and it's all very good because you all have this they all having their normal lives going on, and you get a Judoon ship. The Judoon ship is cool. It's it was awesome to see the Judoon ship sort of in its full from the outside, like we did from Smith and Jones, where they first appeared. You know, like the ship's appearing on the moon, but we also get to see inside of the ship as well, which is additionally really cool. You get to see the TARDIS fly in through the vortex. Like, as you know, I want to see more TARDIS, so it's good to see the vortex being used. And it's not too long in the episode before we start to see the first sort of implications of the series arc. You know, the Doctor's we find out the Doctor's actually just been leaving them on their own, like having their own adventures, exploring, and then she's been going back to Gallifrey multiple times. I think that's what I got. She's been going home alone by, you know, when she goes off to the TARDIS or something like that. So we still don't know what she's learned, you know, or if she has learned anything from going back there. You get the Judoon sort of warning signal that they get, which alerts them to the presence on Earth. And for most of you who are like, well, the Judoon can't be on Earth because they don't have jurisdiction yet, that's all dealt with. You know, it's all they got like a zonal enforcement. You know, no one can get in, no one can go out, but they do make reference to it. The Doctor's not very happy with it, but you know, they sort of brush over it. But they do reference it at least, which is a good thing. If they hadn't have referenced it, I would have really questioned whether they like know stuff about this series. But you know, it's all sort of fine. You see Judoon stomping around, we like that, and then you get them all looking around. They go into the coffee shop or whatever. That guy who has a thing for Ruth, and Graham just all of a sudden gets teleported away, and you're like, wait, what? Why did that happen? And then you spend some time with the Doctor, Yaz, and Ryan as they go to the house of Lee and Ruth, and then you get this funny scene where you know, the guy who's in the coffee, who's running the coffee shop, who's a bit of a weirdo. He has a thing for Ruth, and he has tabs on Lee because he doesn't trust him. And he gives the Judoon the information, and he pushes them, and then of course he's assaulted a Judoon and he gets killed. Like, and I'm not saying he deserved it, but like, he wasn't, like, it would have been very sort of annoying if he kept on in the episode or played a part in the episode. And moreover, there was not even enough time in the episode to deal with him. So, you know, it's funny that they just kill him off because literally they don't have time to spend with anybody else. But you know, they got the Judoon going to the house. They're gonna like proper gun outside, like to shoot at them. You know, shoot first, get the fugitive. You know, I really do think that they worked on the Judoon animatronics in the head, because it does look pretty good. They find out that, well, the Judoon is a woman, and so the Doctor's like going to speak woman to woman. So it's funny that they did that. Nice to see the Doctor talking her way out of things. Like, that's happened a few times this season. So it's good to see that she's still got the gift of the gab. But the big reveal of this episode first is you kind of cut to Graham then, and he's on some sort of spaceship, and you hear a familiar voice, and most people will recognize it instantly, because then in sort of a spark of a transport, Captain Jack Harkness himself appears. And like, honestly, at this point I was like, oh my gosh, they've actually gone and done it. And immediately I was thinking, like, this is both really good, because for the first time they've made a connection between sort of the Russell T Davies era, the Moffat era, with the Chibnall era, because it does feel very separate, the Chibnall era, from everything that's come before. So the fact that they're using Captain Jack, such a main character, to come back into the series, it just shows like it shows a lot of people sort of who prefer the Russell T Davies era, a lot of what they missed from it. Even Captain Jack, when he appears, he's like, "Did you miss me?" Which I think everybody was like, "Yes, we missed you." But he's gold. Every scene that he's in is gold. His interactions with Graham, Yaz, and Ryan later on are brilliant. But that's just John Barrowman. And at this point, I was thinking, right, this is amazing, awesome that we've got him back. But like I want to see why he's back. I want to see his interaction with Jodie Whittaker, but we don't actually get that in this episode. So he's coming back at some point in the future, so we're gonna get to see more of him. But it's all sort of like, I don't want him to be ruined. Like I want it to be good. I want him to be there for a reason, which he probably is. Yeah, it's at this point you're like, okay, is he gonna play into this episode? But it turns out he doesn't, because they have this whole situation where he can't get hold of the doctor and he's on the run, and all of a sudden he has to get out of the ship because his nanogenes are gonna attack him, and he gives a warning to Yaz, Graham, and Ryan saying, "Beware the lone Cyberman. Don't give it what it wants. The Alliance sent something back in time." And at this point you're like, wait, hang on a second, is this to do with Gallifrey, or are they setting up like a completely new arc here? Because we know that like the Cyberman will be back in this series, because it was you see him in the trailer, but like it almost seems completely unconnected. I was like, does this have anything to do with the Timeless Child or not? Or is this kind of like a completely different threat? Which is all a bit weird, and like I was like, okay, interesting. There's another that's like, it adds to the questions that I had about this series already, and just more questions and no answers. But it gets even more crazy, because in the church you get this confrontation between the Judoon and Ruth, who at this point is confirmed that she's like someone who she's not who she thinks she is, and she's actually got a bio shield around her, or biological shielding, so she appears as human, but she's not. And at this point, you're like, okay, something's fishy about her, and then you get the Judoon like recognizing that, and you see her like take down all the Judoon. She goes a bit crazy, and then she rips the horn off a Judoon, which is pretty, like, it's pretty cool to see, and you're like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. But you still have to question like who she is. She gets a message from Lee before he died, and telling her to go see the light or something, or break the light, or break the glass, see the light, break the glass, or something like that in the message. And she recognizes it's the lighthouse where she grew up. And so first little pet hate of the episode is that the Doctor, realizing that this is important, she tells to Ruth that we need to go to the lighthouse. They have a TARDIS, like she has a TARDIS in Gloucester. The Judoon have all gone at this point to rethink their strategy, and she has a TARDIS in Gloucester, and yet they choose to take Ruth's car. I'm like, come on, how long did you waste? Like how much time did you waste getting in the car just so you could have a bit more of a conversation? What? For me, that doesn't make any sense. Like, use your TARDIS. And then you arrive at the lighthouse. The Doctor's looking around. She sees the thing, which is, I presume, some sort of fire extinguisher thing, or a fire alarm. Break the glass, it says. She breaks the glass, and you see this sort of light and a familiar sound of like regeneration energy, and you're like, oh my gosh, she's a Time Lord. Meanwhile, the Doctor's outside looking at a grave. Actually, it's not a grave, she finds out, and she starts digging it up, and before you can think, hang on a second, where'd she got a shovel from, Ruth appears behind her in very elaborate dress that sort of is something that you would not consider out of place on a Time Lord or a Time Lady. And and then it finds out that the Doctor is actually digging up a grave, but the grave is actually the TARDIS. Like there's a TARDIS in there, but it's not her TARDIS. And you're like, oh my gosh, there's another Time Lord here. We've had the Master. Who's it going to be? And it's actually the Doctor. And at this point, I was like, okay, I'm a little confused now, and I have no idea what's going on. So I just kind of sat back, enjoyed the rest of the ride of this episode, and tried to figure it all out. But crazy, because they go into the new Doctor's TARDIS, Ruth Doctor. I'm going to call her Ruth Doctor. They go in Ruth Doctor's TARDIS, and the Doctor is obviously really confused, and they have this whole conversation between them, because the Doctor's like, well, you can't be my past. I remember everyone I was, but also Ruth Doctor doesn't recognize 13, so it's like Ruth Doctor thinks 13 is in her future, and they even make the statement. They're like, one of us must be wrong, and I think we're gonna have to pick a side or something, or we're gonna find out at some point in the future. And even the Sonic says they're the same person, which is crazy. And she's been like a chameleon, like used the chameleon act to stay on Earth for quite a while. And at this point, I'm like, this is why I have trust issues, because like honestly, you don't know what to believe as a viewer, and you can see the Doctor doesn't know what's going on, and it's mad because from then until the end of the episode, you can see she sort of holds it together, especially when they come back face to face with the Judoon. But you can see that she's confused, and like the way she looked in the episode was the way I probably looked. I was like probably like this all the way through. And you find out that this person who like is sort of in league with the Judoon, called Gat, she's actually Gallifreyan as well, and it just makes you're asking all these questions throughout the episode, and then all of a sudden the Doctor like does her mind thing, which she does a lot in this series, and because she finds out that the Ruth Doctor and Gat, this new Gallifreyan, they don't know about Gallifrey's destruction, so which means they have to be like either for her. That means to Jodie's Doctor that they're all in the past. They're all from her past because they don't know about Gallifrey's destruction. But it's all like it really hits home what the Master said. Everything you know is a lie, and I'm like, okay, how far are you going to push this statement? The Doctor looks really confused at the end, and when they all reconvene, like they mention to her Jack, and she's even more confused, like probably everybody else. And you get the whole thing where you got like the Gallifreyans, you got this other Ruth Doctor, and Jack showing up, the lone Cyberman. It's all too much to sort of process, and you get the feeling that everyone sort of showing up at this point, or she says time is swirling around her, and that just makes me think that all these show ups of people that we know or don't know is not a coincidence, and whether it's going to be dealt with this series or in another series is up for debate. Yeah, it makes for an interesting episode, this one, because the whole Judoon story, it's like you ask the question, why are the Judoon there? Well, they're looking for a fugitive, and who's the fugitive? Well, it's the Doctor, and why is she there? And then if the Doctor's there, well, like why are they looking for the Doctor? And so it sort of like goes around in a circle where you ask questions and you're like, the answer to the questions you don't get at all. It's just it's all really convoluted, like bit crazy, like, and that's the thing. I can't think of an episode right now that's only existed to push the story forward. Like you always get episodes that are their own in their own sort of right, but also contain aspects of the series arc. But I feel like this episode almost doesn't need to exist otherwise, just to set up the rest of the series, or even, who knows if this goes on to series 13, because if I think about just the Judoon aspects, they are there to look for the Doctor, but then you don't know why the Doctor's there, and you need answers for that. And they all go away in the end because something the Ruth Doctor did. She said like, "Oh, this is what interstellar space, and there's no laws here." So you're just like, "Well, okay, fine." And then they all leave, and the Judoon go back doing their Judoon things. But it's all just bit crazy. But we do get like a cliffhanger at the end, which is like, we get something going on at the end of the TARDIS, some signals across the planet, which I don't know whether that's going to tie in. They say, is it related? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it's the next episode, I think, is co-written by Chibnall as well. So yeah, we're just going to have to go with it and see where the episode takes us next week. And, the Cybermen are playing a key thing. Apparently they're not the Empire they used to be, but that's all. That's all. There's nothing else. Maybe you made more sense of it than I did, but like it just appeared to me as really crazy. Like this episode, like I don't know how to rate this episode. It's not as bad as Orphan 55, and it's definitely shocking and both has big reveals in it. It doesn't quite. I say that the master reveal in episode one, I feel like that was earned. That was a really good reveal. These reveals, the Jack one was amazing, but again, he's only there to set up the future. Like so, and then the whole Ruth Doctor reveal is only there to set up the future. It's not really earned because we never knew that was coming, or it was never alluded to before. They were never hinted at it. Oh gosh, this series interesting. I'm not going to rate it as low as Orphan 55, but it's definitely, in my opinion, is not as good as Spyfall Part 1 and 2, or I loved the Tesla episode as well. So I'm going to put it at a 7.2 because it's interesting. It's an interesting premise. It doesn't reach up to Spyfall for me. And Tesla was its own episode as well as being like sort of hinting at other things. But like the thing is, like the goodness of this episode in a way totally depends on what answers we get in the end. Do you get it? So it's like we're just gonna have to wait and see. 7.2 is all right. Like for now, like if the answers we get are bad, then probably that will have to go down. But if it's good, then the setup is good. So who knows? Who knows anymore? But anyway, 7.2. That's it. That's the review. I'll see you next week. Hopefully we get some more answers and not like a billion more questions. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll be trying to respond to them. So like let's have a discussion. Yeah, thanks very much for watching. Make sure you click like and subscribe for more videos. I'll be doing this every week for the series, and also check out our gaming channel because I played the Doctor Who VR game on that, and I thought that was brilliant. I love that game. So check it out, and without further ado, I will see you next time. Bye.